My childhood. My precious childhood. Well, party people, the big day has arrived. As of midnight West Coast time, Star Trek Picard has premiered on CBS All Access, which I viewed through Amazon, which allows you to sign up for CBS All Access. You can get the 7-day free trial, which I don't qualify for because I've had CBS All Access before because of Star Trek Discovery, but it's the first time they've gotten any money out of me in, like, what, 9 or 10 months since the last episode of Discovery aired, so maybe not quite that long. Feels like a while. Anyway, so, middle of the night, just watched the very first episode of Star Trek Picard, and generally I'm very satisfied with it. There are little hints of tonal quality here and there, that this is a bad robot, secret hideout era Star Trek, obviously. But actually having characters and actors playing those characters that we are familiar with, owning the roles, kind of helps jump this one right off from the start. Right off the bat, the whole thing with Dodge, this is going to be spoilers filled. A lot of people have kind of reached a stage where they're only really getting to know certain shows through YouTube reviews of them because they don't necessarily want to have to pay the money or actually sit and watch it. So if you're one of those, I'm going to spoil this thing, and if you're not interested in spoilers and just want to hear some random person on YouTube's opinion of it, I say give it a shot. Definitely give it a shot. Like leagues better than either season of Discovery so far. There are things about it, like, because it's anchored into this timeline where it's post the supernova of the Romulan star system that led to the events of the alternate timeline in Star Trek '09 and Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond. It's a kind of a little side way to kind of make sure that the bad robot era of Star Trek is linked in with canon by then having the original actors from Next Generation and other Next Generation era series pop up in this show. In the first episode, all we had a cameo of was Brent Spiner, and it was entirely dream sequences. Data is dead and not coming back. Apparently B4 did not work out. His neural net systems were not adequate enough to properly store and process Data's algorithms from the end of Nemesis. The synthetics that they mentioned, that's just a generic term for any kind of like robotic person. It's not like they had created a specific race or breed of synthetics that destroyed the Utopia Planitia shipyards. Apparently Mars has been on fire for years. And, you know, like, I've already heard some critique and criticism from people before the show even came out about political posturing from Patrick Stewart and some of the other showrunners. I wouldn't read too much into that. The fact that the Federation is kind of becoming a more withdrawn institution in this timeline, or by this point of the timeline, makes sense. Because when you look back on it throughout the entirety of the Next Generation era, almost all interactions between your heroic crews with the Admiralty almost always went sour in a way. All the admirals were corrupt and bad guys in their own. Even probably the best admiral in all the series from the 90s was probably, I can't remember his name, but the admiral that Cisco had been working with a lot during the Dominion War. Even he had his kind of backdoor wink and a nod kind of stuff going on with Section 31. The idea that the Federation has kind of been on a slide away from its original ideals is fine. It's fine. The Federation's ideals are something to strive for, but hard to attain, because in many ways, a lot of the way Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future is set up does kind of fly a little bit in the face of human nature. And it's not to say that humanity has been permanently wedded into this new way of thinking, but that it's a continuous struggle. And at first, in the years after contact, when, you know, humankind is fresh to the experience of being part of a greater galaxy of life, and having the Vulcans constantly looming over us and giving us something to work up to, then the idea that humanity would, you know, knuckle under a lot for several generations and be more upstanding and more true to their values makes sense. But over time, as people get used to it and start to see the flaws in these other aliens, as things kind of start to equalize, you know, some of our old ways and habits would kind of start to reset. It's supposed to be a continuous struggle to maintain, you know, like a high moral standard. It's not like you get there and you just get to rest there. Patrick Stewart, obviously, like, immediately you buy into that, like, this is still Picard. No problem on his end. I like his Romulans that are hanging out with him on his chateau. I will say, I guess the refugee crisis messaging in this show is better illustrated than the ham-fisted attempts in Discovery of trying to make the Klingons out to be the MAGA crowd. Because, like, I know they said that back when Discovery first came out, but it never really came across to me that, like, if this is supposed to be a reflection of Trump supporters, they don't understand Trump supporters very well. And, well, obviously that's clear from another couple of reasons. Not here to really talk about any of that. Unfortunately, though, it is almost 4 in the morning right now, so. But the crux, I guess, of the show, the thing that falls into Picard's lap, is what at first seems to be, you know, Summer Glau's character from Firefly, a young girl who has all these abilities mysteriously activate when she is attacked, and suddenly she's mysteriously able to, like, kick so much ass and jump around and do all sorts of big things. Very reminiscent of Firefly at first. It might, if I was to have one particularly negative point about this episode, it's that. But that impression gets subverted and unraveled before the first episode's over. Because apparently she's actually a daughter of Data somehow. Maybe not directly, but kind of like a daughter in essence. They're having this thing where, like, apparently, like, if you're able to, like, retain any of Data's programming, you can use it to recreate the entire programming for a neural network out of it, or something like that. And, like, I don't know. Anyway, the first Data daughter gets blown up, but she has a twin, and that's the hinge at the very end of the episode, where we find her twin sister is on board that Borg cube that we'd seen in some of the previews. And apparently this Borg cube is under control of a Romulan reclamation effort. So we're going to get some Romulans wielding stolen Borg technology, I guess, coming up. And we'll see. We'll see. Miles upon miles a better series than Star Trek Discovery. And it's only one episode in. Only one episode in. I do recommend it. It is way too early to say how it stacks up in comparison to any other Star Treks or The Next Generation. I will say that just from the typical, you know, movie-verse, TV-verse YouTube channels that I do watch, I've been hearing channels that never, ever, ever brought up Star Trek Discovery have been talking about having an interest in seeing Picard. So that's probably a good sign that it will do a little bit better. There's more curiosity there. Hopefully people will actually pay for it properly and not just pirate the damn stuff. Artists do deserve their cut of the money for their work, after all. But really, you know, it kind of makes me think that there's always been this thing with the whole Star Trek reboot going all the way back to 2009. Why the insistence on rebooting the original series stuff? I know the original hardcore cadre of Star Trek fans would probably get a little bit up in twist in what I'm about to say, but The Next Generation was peak Star Trek. the Star Trek that had the most ratings, that consistently all these years later, like, you know, go to StarTrek.com and they'll have some stupid survey about who's your favorite captain. It's always Picard that wins it. It's never Kirk. Kirk tends to tie with Janeway. No, if they were to like try to reboot Star Trek or bring Star Trek back to actually get like, you know, a good audience sampling and actually get people excited to watch it, they should have gone with Next Generation stuff from the get-go. That's probably in part why the 2009 series of J.J. Abrams' Kelvin universe Star Trek movies just didn't quite take and hold. And it probably doesn't help the Discovery. If Discovery was set in or around or slightly after the Next Generation era, it probably would have been taken to better. But we just keep trying to wed stuff to that original Star Trek. We just need to get away from that. And albeit we are going back to the era of geriatric Trek, because I remember when I was a kid, that was always the big joke about the old original cast Star Trek movies in the 80s and stuff, is all the old men on starships. And this is definitely that. At times, I do feel a little sad watching quavery-voiced old man Jean-Luc Picard having to hustle himself across the room for an action scene or being dragged around upstairs and stuff and getting winded. You know, you feel for the guy. He's like in his 80s or something like that. But I guess life's still expensive even in merry old England, so he can't turn down these kinds of paychecks. Plus, he's got family and all that I'm sure he wants to have set up nicely. Hopefully he can keep his ass pumped up full of life extension drugs long enough to get at least 2 or 3 more seasons out of it. Apparently he went on The View and asked Whoopi Goldberg on live television if she'd like to come back for season 2 of Picard and reprise her role as Guinan. And we already know that season 2 is going to get made. To people who are like, oh, it's just a marketing gimmick. Look, Patrick Stewart is old and could die any time. It's the reality of life. It's nothing against him. I hope he stays around with us for years. But, you know, he is the age he is. And so we don't need to pull a Carrie Fisher again. We need to get as much film of that guy in the can so we can get as much episodes of this show done and wrapped up and finished. Just don't try to drag this show on too long, CBS All Access. Like, wrap it up in 3 years, tops. Put a bow tie on the end of it and walk away. Don't just keep trying to drag it out until he does pass and then you're stuck with a show that's never finished. You know, wrap the story up, get it over with and done and in the can, and we can all enjoy it. I do think I'm going to enjoy this one. I wasn't really looking forward to it, but I am a born and raised Trekkie, so, like, obviously the second it was available to watch, I was getting on there, so. Anyway, like, subscribe, leave comments, blah, 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 blah. No one cares. It's a low production quality channel anyway, but, yeah, give it a shot. And I would say, keep an eye on some of the reviews you see here on YouTube, and because I do think a lot of how people react to the show, if they're being honest, they will admit to the fact that, yes, for all the things going against it with Alex Kurtzman and all the drama behind the scenes, and the fact that the opening credits, once again, is mostly executive producers and co-executive producers and only like 2 or 3 stars listed in the credits, in spite of all that, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I don't know if it's good yet. We need a couple more episodes, but I can say that it's not bad. And that's something. Something's better than nothing. But, as we all know, certain YouTube channels kind of have an agenda about some shows and whatnot. Especially if people in the production of those shows have made public their own political views and whatnot. And so there's going to be a lot of prejudgment coming into this thing, which is going to color a lot of people's perceptions of it. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to, like, as soon as they're watching it and they see Dodge start kicking ass, they're going to be like, this is Hollywood trying to shove girl power down our throats. She's a fucking android, okay? Androids are allowed to kick ass, regardless of their artificial gender. So, be chill. And And there's going to be other channels that are just going to, like, you know, suck ass on it just because, like, they gotta promote their agenda too. Be careful of both of them. The honest brokers will suss themselves out over this. It's seriously, though, it's a good show. Give it a shot.